those aren't. I'll find one. But my point being is that what's going to happen is your ACDC is going to reference that sidecar file to present the changes to you for that image, rather than actually making adjustments to the, there we go, HDR, the image itself. Okay, so let's just take this little, so all of these files here are raw files. We'll just take one in the center here. I'll just remove some developments on the image itself. So when I go to edit this file, actually, let's remove all of them since that's going to make this easier to see. Just give me 1 second. I'm just removing edits to these images. I'll just open up one file, for example. And what we'll do is we'll take this into develop mode and we'll start talking about parametric non-destructive editing. And then this will give you a good idea to sort of see how, and we'll talk about saving later on. But what we're going to showcase is that at the end of our editing process, the ACDC is going to create a sidecar file for us. And that sidecar file is going to contain all the edits that we made to this file, so that when we open up this file in ACDC, when we open up, sorry, this image in particular, it opens it up with that with reference to that sidecar file that we created. Now, a huge thing about this is that we don't see that sidecar file. This is essentially a file that ACDC hides from you. It doesn't show you it. You can turn it on, but it doesn't show you it because we don't want it to interact or interrupt the flow. And importantly, when we go to move the file, we need to also make sure that we're moving the corresponding sidecar file, which is handled naturally if those files are not present. In other words, that they're sort of they're hidden from view. So ACDC naturally will do that, provided that that those files are hidden. Does that make sense to everybody? What I'm trying to illustrate to you is, because this file is proprietary, it's created by a camera maker, and they want to kind of maintain the secrets of that. Basically what we have to do is we have to find ways to save changes to your images that aren't on the raw file itself. And so that's the way that ACDC does it, is it creates this sidecar file that contains the edits to your image. Let's go inside. Let's go into this developer here. So when you're in develop mode, so we're in develop mode right now. Develop mode is sort of broken into 3 more main sections. So we have a section for development presets. We have a section for sort of the film strip, which again looks very similar to that of edit mode. And all these is they're clickable, and what you can do is you'll go to basically click onto this image and you'll go into the next series of your film strip. So you can go through, you can essentially edit these one by one if you wanted to. And then the actual editing functions themselves appear on the left-hand side, or the development tools side. So development tools, I said earlier, are parametric and non-destructive, and let's kind of show you what that means. First and foremost, develop mode is truly non-destructive. There are caveats to non-destructiveness in edit mode, but in develop mode, there isn't any. Everything you do in develop mode can be reverted, right? Or it can be adjusted. There's no concern in regards to you making a change to edit and develop mode that you want to alter in the future. So, whereas, let's see, and then part of that is the parametric aspect of it. And all that means is that it makes a bunch of simultaneous edits to your image that are in reference to each other at the same time. So it's making a bunch of changes to this image at the same time, and that's preserving non-destructiveness. Yeah, that's a good question, Bill, because sort of I have been sort of focusing it more on in a respect to raw images. Everything that I've said is true for JPEGs, PNGs, TIFF files, any sort of file type that's handled in develop mode. I think even with JPEGs, we still create the sidecar file. It might, I'm just trying to remember if it might save it to the JPEG just because it is editable, but I'm pretty certain that it just creates a sidecar file in that case as well. And of course, the non-destructiveness and sort of the way that applies parametric changes to your image are true of your JPEGs and your PNGs and all other file types. It's kind of just a sort of a rule of using this developer. Now, and the reason why, so again, it's holding on to those non-destructive elements because it's not actually changing, pardon me, the file directly, but it's sort of, we're creating a series of adjustments to a file. We're essentially telling we're putting numbers in this file that say, hey, exposure equals 150, or you know what I mean? So it's adding this information. Yeah, so Trevor alluded to something that we're going to talk about later when it comes to saving. Yeah, I just mentioned that earlier, Marv. When I'm talking about parametric editing, I'm just referring to a series of adjustments. So, for example, if I take these midtones up, oops, not the highlights, and maybe the shadows up a bit. Let's make some adjustments to this image really quickly. Yeah, even further. Maybe we can make some general level changes here. Increase the saturation slightly. Maybe just exposure up a bit overall. So what you can see is that we have a series of adjustments to this image now. I'm just going to save this. And so when we come back to this image later, right, we can see that these three adjustments, the adjustment that we made to the general, the exposure and saturation, is active, which I'll explain in a sec. The temperature white balance adjustment is active, and then our light EQ changes are active. So these three things are active at the same time, and they're editable in this case. So the parametric aspect of it is sort of the group non-destructiveness and the group changes that are being applied. Okay, so as I change those objects, a couple things you'll notice. First and foremost, a little bit about how develop mode works is when we adjust these sliders, they're essentially treated as changed or on. And you can see that adjustment is on because of this blue icon that appears that says deactivate this group. This just intends to show us that there is some changes here and this group is active. In the same way that with edit mode that we can hide a layer, we can hide this change as well. And we can hide this change by just clicking on the deactivate this group icon. Next to that is a series of presets, which we will talk about maybe later if we have time. And then just a revert object here. So we have this little icon that allows us to reset all these values. And so if I wanted to reset all these values, right? Save this image. You can see that when I go back into this developer now, these are essentially changed, right? Like they're no longer active, and we know they're no longer active because the group is no longer active and the reset icon is no longer present. So let's go in and let's just change our image again very quickly. There we are. Bring these up slightly, those down. Anyway, so now we have our image and it's adjusted again. So if I was to go and navigate away from this image and save it, those sort of presets, in this case, these development preset settings are held on to. So we know two things. Basically, we know that when we edit an image, we are that is non-destructive in develop mode, right? Fully non-destructive. We know that we can change these values at any point. So importantly, each of these sections has their own reset button. However, we can also just reset all of the adjustments that we've made to our image at the same time. I don't have to manually click on each of these. So if I wanted to do that, I could do that as well. So that sort of resets these changes. And as you can see, I mean, there's other things as well that are in develop mode that are relevant in that there's 4 tabs. So we have a tab for tune adjustments, a tab for detail adjustments, a tab for changing the geometry of your image, and then spot repair. There's certain things that people say like, oh, these look really similar. These adjustments are really similar to the ones that are available to me in edit mode. And the reality is that many of these tools are very similar. There's going to be subtle differences in how they're used, but there's also subtle differences, or not so subtle differences, rather, in how these adjustments are saved. So as I've talked about, these are fully non-destructive, and these are something that we can reference later, right? So that sort of covers the parametric aspect of it and the non-destructiveness aspect of it. Maybe before I showcase about saving in develop mode, I can also showcase a little bit about how to do batch functions as well, because both edit mode and develop mode have their own batch functionality that I think is really, really relevant for when we're making adjustments. And this is something too that I've said in the past. I think a lot of people are pretty, actually, let's just poll this now. I'm just curious. How many people are intimately familiar? They've used both the Actions browser, and also develop presets. Just as a rule, how many people know exactly what I'm talking about when I say that? Nice. Awesome. Thank you, Trevor. Pia, awesome. Thank you, Bob. Develop, yes. Okay, so hasn't used Actions browser. No. Okay, great. This is also awesome to me too, because okay, actually I have a sub question for you, Marv, if you feel like answering it. Maybe just type out your answer, but you know about them. Just out of curiosity, is there a reason why you don't incorporate them into your workflow? Is it just because you're not taking a lot of very similar images, or yeah, a lot of people that haven't used this is awesome. This is not going to be reiterative. And for those of you that it is a bit reiterative, we'll showcase a little bit as well here. Man, okay. So lots of no's. That's great. That helps me. So how do I explain this? Okay, so you have one image and you make some adjustments to it. And you want to save the settings, the adjustments themselves. And the reason why is because you are a fashion photographer or a wedding photographer, and a lot of the photos that you're taking are held in lighting environments where the lighting either doesn't change much, or you've taken it at a certain time of day that the lighting circumstances are very similar. And so obviously these images are all beautiful because you're a great photographer, but you have a couple tweaks that you want to make to them to sort of finalize these for your customer or client. And so instead of manually making these changes one by one, you want to go through the process of essentially editing all of these images at once. So let's showcase what that means, because both edit mode and develop mode have what is called as a batch editor. So what I'm talking to you about right now is batch editing. Let's make those exact same lighting changes to this image. I'll turn up the temperature. I'll turn up the exposure again. Let's turn up the saturation. Actually, let's turn up not the contrast, sorry. Clarity, there we go. And then we'll turn up the light EQ, so midtones up, but not too up. And then was it shadows? I think it's shadows. There we go. Yeah, pull that up a little bit. So I've made a couple changes to my image, and we'll just quickly check to make sure. Let's see here. Yeah, let's just make sure there's no, okay, there's a little bit of washing out. So let's dial back the exposure a little bit. And we'll have a quick look at the shadows here. Oh no, that isn't that. Is it the highlights? Where is that? What I'm doing right now is I'm just trying to make sure that there's not too much true whites and true blacks in my image. So the true whites are these red parts of our image here, and that just if we all of these values are 100%, then it kind of removes the contrast or the saturation in that part of the image. And the same is true for the blacks, which are represented by the green here. So I'm just doing what they call a little clipping check right now, just to make sure that we don't have any true whites or true blacks. But it's okay. We have very little in this image. That's fine. So I've made 3 adjustments to my image, same as before, basically. some general adjustments, some white balance adjustments, and some light EQ adjustments. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create a preset that will apply these adjustments to other images. Again, I gave the example of fashion photography or wedding photography, and we're just going to apply these adjustments to a completely different image. To do this, we're going to create a little develop mode preset category. And the reason why we want this category is just so we know where to save it. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new category here. And I'll call this category Adams. Let's just say Adams lighting. And I'll click OK. And as you can see, the develop preset has been added. It's right there. And there's nothing inside of it, which is fine. And then what we can do is we can sort of save a preset in here. So we'll go and we'll save this preset. So I'm going to click the little cogwheel up at the very top of the develop tools. Note that you can save individual presets, but that just saves that one particular lighting adjustment. So if I clicked on the cogwheel next to the white balance, I can save a preset of just that function. But if I want to save everything that is contained within tune, detail, geometry, and repair, to do that, I use the adjust develop settings here at the top, and I save a preset from the very top level menu here. And that basically contains everything underneath. And I'm going to be honest with you, I only ever use the top one here. I never use the actual individual ones, but they're there. So if you see any use for them, use them. Click on save preset. And what it's going to do is it's going to provide me with a series of essentially series of developed settings, and we're just going to reference the settings that we want to save. We can select all of these, and the reason why is because we don't have any other adjustments active. We just have general white balance and light EQ. But one of the benefits of just saving general white balance and light EQ themselves is that if I have already made development changes to an image, I will overwrite those development changes if I select all. So in this case, I'm just going to do some good classic preset saving, and I'm just going to make sure that I've got exposure and clarity selected and saturation. And then as for the color part, we changed the white balance. And then for light EQ, we'll do that one as well. So that's all we really changed. We changed exposure, saturation, light EQ, clarity, and white balance. And I will name this preset. We'll just call it Adams. Let's just say Adams Harbor. And I will click OK. And what that's going to do is it's going to save it. If I remember correctly, it might be saved to the all panel, but we can actually move this. So let's see if I think I can just move it by right clicking on it, and I can set it to a particular category. So I'll move it into my Adams lighting category. And so that creates a brand new preset. And so what I can do is I can click on the next image in my series, and I can actually run that preset on this individual image. But the other thing I can do is I can navigate to a top level manage mode here, and I can select a series of images, say these images right here. And then what I can do is I can go to the batch function and batch develop, because the tool we used was develop mode to make this preset. So I'll click on batch develop, and nicely thanks to it's the most recent one on the list here. So we'll click that one. And this will allow me to take these series of images and essentially develop them simultaneously. It'll take a second for the preview to pop up, and there it is. So I have all these images that have that develop application that has been applied. I don't know if you can assign a hotkey to that, TJ. Maybe send me a message over the community page and I'll find an answer for you. So I've applied that simultaneously to all of these images. And as you can see, an icon appears. So that icon appears on the bottom left-hand corner, and all that icon tells me is that these images have been developed, right? They contain development adjustments on those images. For the time being, ignore this little icon next to this one. All this means is that this contains snapshots as well. We won't have time to talk about snapshots today, but in essence, it's just another function within develop mode. But all of these have been developed and therefore contain these adjustments. So if I go to develop mode here and I've clicked on an image later on in my series, you can see that the corresponding development changes have been made to this image. So the general changes are done, the white balance changes are done, and the light EQ changes are done. Now, so the icon appears, we know that they're changed. Let's see if I can remember how to showcase their corresponding sidecar files. Let's see if I can remember here. Advanced filters. Yeah, here it is. Yeah, I will show you, Pradyuman. Absolutely. So this is a necessary background detail, but I'm going to show it to you anyway. So it's helpful. Oops, didn't mean to do that. Undo. There we go. So I'm just going to navigate to filter here, and then under advanced filters, there's a way to show hidden files and folders and XMP files. Yeah. And so XMP files are the sidecar file that I mentioned. It's the file that contains all those adjustments. And so when you've done that, you can see that each of these images that I've made an adjustment to, I'll just show that, have a sidecar file that's associated with them. So specifically these ones in a row here, actually these two as well, all of these files have sidecar files. So if I go back to advanced filters and I show them, you're seeing that those highlighted images contain sidecar files, right? Now, these sidecar files are the things that I talked about earlier. This is the thing that contains those adjustments, that series of information within the file. But like I said, the ACDC references this file when it goes to show you the adjustments. So this sidecar file is really important. And as it stands right now, if they're shown, right, they have to be moved as a unit. But if they're hidden, they don't have to be moved as a unit. You can just move the file itself, and the sidecar file is sort of treated as a member of that file. But as long as you're showing them, then it's important, if this is something that matters to you and you want to see that sidecar file, which in my opinion is unnecessary. This is just background information. Just note that they have to be moved as a unit, especially if you're going to be moving them to a different folder. To move them without that sidecar file would be to essentially like leave their changes in another location, which means that they're just going to be treated as though they don't have any. So that's a bit of background information, but it shows to you like what's going on in the background and gives you a little bit more information about develop mode's editing and saving process. Della asked, late, will this be replayable later? Yes, YouTube, always YouTube for any of that. And so that sort of covers at least making parametric editing, batching with parametric. I showed you literally the sidecar file itself, how it appears, and sort of what is contained within it. So adjustments, thumbnails, these sort of things that are contained within that file, right? And then the physical process of making developments in develop mode is going to look a little bit different than those adjustments in, say, edit mode. Just for posterity's sake, I can also showcase something to you that's kind of cool. If at any point you've made development changes to your image and you want to completely remove those development changes and reset them to their original qualities, you can select the files in your folder, go to process by right-clicking. So simply right-click, process, and restore to original, and that will remove all will remove all of the developments on your images at once. And I'm going to do that, and the reason why is because I often reuse these images for explanation purposes. TJ asked, will it only move both files when in ACDC? Will it move file from Explorer? Yeah. So if you are in Explorer, I'm just going to remind myself if it's even visible in Explorer right now. Well, let's have a look. So I'm going to navigate to this exact same file folder. So if it's under pictures and it's under HDR, okay. Pictures, HDR right here. And then it's under HDR2. Yeah, so the sidecar files are contained within that section there. These might not have any information anymore just because I reset all of them. But in this case, a sidecar file has been created because adjustments have been made historically to this. You would, if you had adjustments to your raw file, you would need to move them alongside each other. You couldn't move them independently because that would unlink them. Again, so the merit to moving them in ACDC is it does that process for you. So for example, if I say I move DSC00073, if I was to move that, let's move it to a different folder. Let's move it to the grayscale folder. Let's see. It should be moved with its corresponding sidecar file. So grayscale. Yeah, so your DSC file, when moved in ACDC, also moves the XMP or the sidecar file. Again, you know, the important point here is that these might not even be visible to you. I think I might have even turned on like showing sidecar files in Windows. So, but the really the important point here is that if you're going to move ACDC files, if you're going to move raw files, developed files, you're going to want to move those in ACDC just because it enables you to maintain those developments if those developments matter to you, right? That's all there is to it. And then once they're in the same folder again, then they will reinteract, right? Okay. Oops. Close that. Earlier, so somebody asked. They might not be, Richard. I can't remember this, but I think that might be something that I have historically turned on, but I can't remember for certain. So I mean, this is something you could check too, or you can send me a message on the community page, and I will just double check with our developers that XMP file might not be viewable necessarily, although it looks like that is the case. I'm just literally forgetting this, so. But I will find out for you. So send me a message. Okay, so and then one person had a question. Oh yes, Pradyuman had a question as well. So we talked about making development changes with raw, but we haven't necessarily talked about them with just any old JPEG photo. So we'll just quickly do that right now. We'll take our just a random folder here, take an image, and let's just make some quick developments to this image here. Just again, we'll just increase some some exposure, light EQ, a bit of clarity, pull down the midtones, increase the highlights, maybe pull down the shadow slightly. So I've got a couple changes to this image here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to save. And so this now contains development adjustments. And if we wanted to, let's see if I can just turn on. Yeah, so the JPEG file itself will contain the edits. So the JPEG can be moved independently. It doesn't also create the sidecar file there. And that's the reason why, is because JPEG is a writable file, so it can be written to it. But that sort of showcases the development process for that, Pradyuman. Joseph asked if I edit the XMP file, will... Yes, that I wouldn't do that. Don't do that. Yeah, that's gonna cause real issues. They're not even supposed to be something you can see in ACDC. You have to turn that function on. The reason why I was sort of showcasing that is just so you can understand the background process. But yeah, don't mess with those files. It's gonna ruin your adjustments. So Sheila asked, set preset development settings first, then select images in that order. Yeah. Yeah, I would do that. I mean, it makes it so that you can adjust them as a batch, right? You can adjust them together rather than going through that process and adjusting them one by one, which I think would work too, but might take longer. Trevor asked, I just use copy settings, paste settings to achieve the same result, which is what he means is, let's see here if I can remember. That might be a manage mode. Copy settings, paste settings. This is doable too. Copy settings, copy all. If they're copied, go into a separate image. And then let's see if it'll allow me to paste that setting. Paste settings, yeah. So what Trevor was talking about is going in manually to every image and copying and pasting the settings that you've made in the developer to the next image, which is also doable. I would, in that case, I would still create a preset, maybe just because it would be something where you can just click on it rather than having to right click on this, paste the settings. You can just sort of go through and, manually click on the actual adjustment itself as you make it. But that's a workflow thing. And if you prefer a certain workflow, there's lots of ways to do the same thing in ACDC. Bill asked, if I copy an image to another folder, will the side profiles be copied as well? Yes. Tony, maybe you should not ask this, but here goes. If a third-party program is used to process a raw file, can this be undone with the stored original key? No, well, hold on. Let me think about this. Well, you can't process a raw file directly. You can only make a copy, or you can do similar things to what we do, which is create a sidecar file. So if you were to say make adjustments in another editor, and then open up that image in ACDC, ACDC is not even going to recognize you've made any changes to that image unless you saved it as a writable file, like you saved it as a JPEG afterwards, or a PNG or TIFF that is not a raw file, and then it will contain those visual adjustments to that image. But just because raw files are proprietary, you can't actually change the raw file. You have to create a system by which that references a sidecar file or some other means, right? So I'm not worried about that. I think what it would appear here is you're going to open that image and it's going to look identical to the original image you took. Yeah. Okay, let's move on to edit mode, because we covered most of the things that I wanted to talk about in manage mode. In develop mode. So edit mode is it doesn't necessarily have the same non-destructiveness as develop mode. So whereas develop mode is truly non-destructive in every way, edit mode is going to be selectively non-destructive, and I will showcase what I mean. Let's go into a file. Let's just go to this guy right here. So I've opened up this image in edit mode. Let's talk a little bit about the UI, because it looks very similar. First and foremost, once again, so common elements are this film strip here. Common elements might be the info palette and the histogram if you have it turned on. There's going to be a whole new right-hand panel here, and this is entirely dedicated to layers and adjustment layers. This section here, broadly speaking, okay, very broadly speaking, these tools are non-destructive tools on the right-hand panel. Broadly speaking, the tools that are located in the info palette, or the filter menu here, right, on the left, these adjustments are destructive changes. Now, where this gets a bit interesting and complicated is that even within destructive changes, you can save them in such a way that holds on to your original image. So in edit mode, the big difference, the real difference between edit mode and develop mode is something called layers. So when I have this right-hand panel here, it showcases my image, and you notice that this image is viewable and movable. When I have other images that I'm engaging with, let's just add another image just for fun. I have two images now. 2 images on my layer order. I have my little cocktails and I have my background image here. And so when I move these, you can see that they are visually prioritized, right? So essentially what I'm trying to showcase is that layer order matters in a big way in edit mode. We are holding on to multiple files with multiple information. So first and foremost, that's not doable in develop mode. Develop mode doesn't do that. Edit mode does do that. Develop mode is a strict editor. It edits your files. Edit mode is a photographic art tool. And the difference between photographic art and strict editing is that photographic art is going to combine more images together, right? Now, you don't need to use it this way, right? You can just go through and visually change your images just as you would normally. I can go through and I can go, oh, I'll make an exposure change to this image. In the filter tool, I'm going to, say maybe increase the contrast and reduce the exposure. Click done. The problem is that what I just changed is totally destructive, right? It's already changed this image on the right, which means that it's now finalized. The only way that I can go back is to undo the action. But you'll know just as well as I do that if you've made a series of adjustments to your images, it might be difficult to go back, right? So develop mode, you can go in, you remember we changed the exposure and I could reset that individual field. I can't do that in edit mode, right? Not using the filter menu. Like I said, the filter menu is destructive, right? Okay, so I am going to undo that action. And now let's do the exact same action, but let's use adjustment layers rather than the filter menu. So if I go through and I use this exposure adjustment, and we'll just increase the contrast and lower the exposure again, I have this little layer that pops up. And so it tells me that it's an exposure layer, and it puts it above my image layer. And what's valid about this, and what's really important about this, is at any point, I can just click on exposure here, this little icon, rather than the image beneath it. I can click on it, and oh, would you look at that? I can actually still adjust this image. I can make changes to this. So I can crank the contrast on that even further, lower the exposure, I can increase exposure, blah, blah, blah. So while we're talking about non-destructiveness is held within these adjustment layers. It's a part of it, right? Rather than working with filter menus, which allow you to create the settings and the circumstance, and then go through and finalize those adjustments. But finalizing those adjustments will flatten your image. It's going to take those changes and it's going to flatten them into one file and essentially present you one thing without giving you the ability to adjust. So here's 2 things before we move on. First thing, okay, is I said that ACDC is non-destructive. I showed you that given the example of this exposure adjustment, that these are non-destructive changes. But the other important thing is if I want to save this file, right? I want to make sure that I can edit this in the future. Okay, so I'm not going to flatten this file when I save it. I want to be able to come back to this image in the same way that I came back to my other images in develop mode, and I want to edit them. Well, you can do that, but you have to save the file as an ACDC file. So I'm going to save this file as, it's going to pop up with the save as window, and it's already by default set to ACDC. And so I'm just going to save it. I'm going to save as editable file. And when I go to do that, it's going to take a moment, and all of the layers that are contained within your file, all of the adjustments that you've done, all of that is saved with it. So when I go back to manage mode, I'll put them right next to each other. Well, first of all, you can see the difference, right? I'll show you the difference right now. So we have our original image that's on the left here, and then we have our edited ACDC file that's on the right here. So if I open up the JPEG, right, the original, and there's not going to be any adjustments to it. However, if I go into edit mode and I'm using an ACDC file, what's going to happen is it's going to present us that image it's also going to hold the exposure adjustments that we had. So our exposure right here, oh, would you look at that? It's right up on top of our layer order and still adjustable, right? Still adjustable. If I made this as a filter change, it would have flattened my image and I wouldn't have been able to edit it in the future. So with that being said, when I gave you the caveat that edit mode is broadly speaking non-destructive, what I was referring to is the things that appear on the right here. Those layers, the layer order, masks that have been added. Unfortunately, I won't be talking about masks today just because they add a level of complexity, but I would go to my previous workshop, the one on YouTube that I did just last week, talks all about it. And then all of these adjustment layers, that sort of thing, these are all non-destructive. Okay, now I said there's a way to take your filters and make them somewhat non-destructive. So let's talk about that. In edit mode, you don't have the ability to have these filters be truly non-destructive. That's not possible. But what you can do is you can save versions of your layers using duplicate. So if I was to take my layer here and I was to duplicate it, I have a second layer here. I'll just rename it. I'll call it test. Oops. This test layer, I can do whatever I want to it because now I have two copies of the same layer, right? So if I wanted to make an adjustment that I was unhappy with, I'll just delete the test layer, or I'll make another duplication of the original layer and work with that. For example, let's say I wanted to split tone this image. Because I'm feeling funky. And I want to do, okay, so the highlights, let's make them, what should we make them? Let's make them kind of like a blue, and shadows we'll do kind of almost like a somber kind of red to it. So I've got a split tone adjustment here, and I'm going to click done. And once again, this is going to flatten that, it's going to flatten it for sure. But as you can see, it's held within the layer order, which means that I still have my original image. It's right here. All I need to do is either move that original image up, right? And it's visible again, or I can use the hide icon and it hides the adjustment that I've made. I can also delete this layer and I can start the process all over again. I can create another duplication to do something different. The point is that the layer is truly flattened, but because I've made a duplication of it, I don't lose my original layer that I want to work with. And there's a real distinct difference there. So while these filters aren't non-destructive, they can sort of be made somewhat non-destructive with the emphasis of duplicating the image. And if I wanted to do, say, that same split tone again, right? The other thing I can do, let's do the highlights and the shadows. Let's just crank these settings. Oh, yeah, that's funky. The other thing I can do is I can apply opacity adjustments, which sort of blur one layer and apply it, or not blur it, but sort of reduce the opacity on one layer and apply it to the layer that exists beneath it. So the two main takeaways here are that layers are non-destructive. They're movable. As long as you save it as an ACDC file, you can interact with these in the future. Adjustment layers are non-destructive. And provided you make duplications of your layers, you can play around with these filters somewhat non-destructively. So there's ways around what I'm talking about, right? Okay, Trevor asked, could you please show how to increase the size of canvas in edit mode? You showed this last week, but I forgot already. Not a problem. It's pretty quick and easy, so I will showcase it. In edit mode, you can go to the resize canvas tool on the top left next to file edit. Click on it, and you can simply expand your image. And that will increase the dimensions of your canvas. It's going to fill it with a color. As you can see here, I just have red on default, but if I was to change it to white or something like that, it would be white. And that enables you to make the canvas larger. And then you commit that and it finalizes it. So the big takeaways here, yeah, you're welcome, Trevor, no problem. The big takeaways here are destructiveness within ACDC is sort of relegated to the filter menu, and also some tool usages. Non-destructiveness is held within layers and adjustment layers. And the big thing about this is that unlike develop mode, which you can't create photographic art in, you just can't. You can in edit mode, and the difference is that you have layers. You can work with multiple layers, which means you can combine things, which means that you can actually make sort of compositions in edit mode that are impossible to do just based on editing your images on themselves. So I hope that makes sense. So we talked about saving as an ACDC file. We talked about layers and filters, and we talked about making layered edits. I'll take a quick moment to talk about actions too, because we talked about making batch presets in develop mode, and I would like to pair that now to actions in edit mode, which functions very similarly. But first, John had a question. How do you handle different crops in edit mode? For example, different crops for printing, since crop is destructive. Yeah, so crop is destructive. The crop tool per se has been sort of changed to the resize canvas tool. Crop isn't really a thing anymore in edit mode. But resize canvas does reduce the size of canvas, right? So if I was to make this canvas size much smaller, and then I go to commit it, what's going to happen is it's going to change the relationship of my image. It's going to completely change the size of it. And so that's going to cause issues if I want to expand it again, right? Because if I want to expand it again, oh, I've lost the detail on that file. So that sort of that changed the relationship of this file to the content that was outside of it, right? In the sense that now I've sort of because I made it smaller and then I made it larger, I've lost information in this layer. So yeah, that's a consideration. That's a destructive change for sure. The actual cropping itself is non-destructive though, right? In the sense that I did make that bigger. In fact, I can make it even bigger if I wanted to, right? So while the change of making it smaller removes the information on my file here, right? It removes information in regards to this picture, right? The actual act of increasing or decreasing the canvas size is totally non-destructive in this image. John, does that distinction make sense? If I'm only ever going to change exposure and white balance, should I use develop or edit mode? Great question. Use develop mode. Great question. The reason why is because A, smaller file sizes. B, it's more non-destructive, which means there's less error, less user error issues. And the third thing is, what else is there to say about that? Oh, and the third thing is you can use those presets that I mentioned earlier, Bob, and then you can apply those presets, and those are fairly simple and easy. Edit mode, like I said, is used for creating photographic art. So unless you're not combining images together, you're not using edit mode to the fullest extent of its possibilities, which might not be a problem for you. Maybe you're just like, oh, I want the best version of ACDC, and I want, if I need to make layered edits in the future for something, great, I have the tool, I could do that. But if you're just going to be changing exposure and like light EQ or something, you know, in your image, and you just use develop mode. There's no shame in that. That's exactly what it's there for, you know? So don't worry about that at all. I think that's a great question. I think it's a real practical question where you're like, hey, this is what I do to my images. What would be the best tool for me? Yeah. And in that case, it's the one that's fully non-destructive and that it's easier to go in and edit, you know? So hopefully that answers your question. Okay. So Ingrid says, are the two saved files then the same size? Yes. In correspondence with the canvas size, they are the same size. So if you notice that the grayscale area here, the area that surrounds our main image here, this transparency here, when I increase it, it also increases that transparency for the image that exists above it, right? Yeah. So the canvas is the one sort of element of that this is held on to. You wouldn't necessarily change canvas size that much. And you'll notice too that crop as a function still exists within this mode. Here, let me just remove these layers. I'll just throw this on top. Oops, didn't mean to do that. Just go into a new image. Crop as a function still works. In ACDC, you can still do that. It's a filter now. So which gives you control over width and height in the same way that the resize canvas tool does. But it has some other elements that you can visualize here. It also enables you to save a preset. So if you wanted to replace that over and over, and then it gives you some positioning functions. So you can sort of position it based on some sort of algorithm, which is a little bit different than maybe just resizing canvas, which is visualized, right? It's totally visualized tool. But if you strictly wanted to say, oh, I want to go by 20 by 24, that's not a big problem. You can totally do that. Both functions work very similarly. Crop, I suppose, again, as a filter is destructive. Elements of the resize canvas tool are destructive as well. Okay, I was going to do one thing. Oh, I was going to show you how to make actions. So batch editing, we were talking about that earlier. Batch presets in develop mode, actions browser in ACDC in edit mode. So the actions browser, yes, it will. Pradaman will be on our YouTube page. Take care, Marv. Okay, so the actions is the way you save batch adjustments in edit mode. So, for example, actions browser comes preset with a bunch of pre-made sort of pre-made changes, right? To your images that can be applied as a batch. So if I was to go navigate to manage mode and pick a folder, for example, with a bunch of images, what I could do is I could click on a series of images and I could go to the batch file, so the actions function, and I can play one of these actions on all of these images at the same time. So for example, if I was to do like a dark vignette and play it on these images, what it's going to do is it's going to make adjustments based on the criteria of whatever dark vignette was. So they're all there. They've been added. They have new adjustments to them, so they look different from the other ones. For example, if I was to compare these two together, click those. This is the one we've applied that action to, and this is our original. So how do we create actions? Well, actions can be created pretty simply. I'll just click on an image in our window here, and I'll click on edit. And what we're going to do is we'll turn on something called record new action. And what record does is it follows along. So as you're making adjustments to your image, it will add elements to your recording. So let's make some image edits. Let's change the curves. Oops. Just make some very broad adjustments to this image here. Make I don't know. It doesn't matter here. Let's make a gradient map. Why not? Let's do a weird gradient map that we can see on our image. Just something that we can see the changes to. So if I reference my recording action, I have a vibrance adjustment added, I have a curves adjustment added, and I have a gradient map added. So that is recorded, right? And then what I do is I simply click on the stop recording icon at the top here. And this is going to give me the ability to save the adjustment, the action, sorry, to a category. So we'll add it to Adam's landscape category, and we'll call it let's call it gradient map blue, and I will save this. And so then that's saved to that corresponding category. So if I was to click on the actions browser, you can see that Adam's landscape category, the first one that pops up here, or the second one that pops up here, contains my gradient map blue, which means that I can then go through the process of clicking on these same images. So let's apply it to these ones right here. And I'll go up to the actions function. I'll find the one I just created and I'll play it. And by playing it, it'll create this exact action on my corresponding images, and it'll save a new series for me, as you can see. So if we were to reference number 1, 2, and 3, oops, there we go. So our original will be on the left. The default one that is created in ACDC that I applied is in the center. And the action that I just created, the gradient map one, is then applied to the one on the right. Does that make sense, everybody? Does anyone want me to sort of repeat an element? That's how you create batch adjustments in edit mode. Is you turn on the recording process, you make some edits, and then you play those adjustments to a either another image in your film strip or other images in your manage mode. PS, when I used an action to my photo, can I see and refine the steps by myself? Very good question. Let's see here. Let's go into our image here. Oh, you know what? Yeah. Okay, let's go to actions. Select an image. Let's see if this works. And then I can answer your question in a moment, Pia. Green map blue. Let's see. Looks like it might. Yeah, aren't those nice? Okay, yes. So the answer to that question is Pia. Good question. Great question, in fact. So Pia asked, when I used an action to my photo, can I see it and refine the steps by myself? You can't refine the steps as it's being played on the image. You can refine the steps as you're recording it. After the fact, say you've recorded one you really like and you've played it on your image, and you want to be able to adjust those changes that you've made, that the action that you've applied to your image. The way you do this is by navigating to an image. You'll go to the actions section here. And what you're going to do is you're going to find the action that you created. And what you're going to do is you're going to go to options. And under options, what you need to do is make sure that the file format is set to ACDC if you want to be able to edit the adjustments that you're going to then apply to the file. Because JPEGs, by default, are not going to be editable files. They're going to be flattened files. So if you change this to ACDC, again, actions, the action that you created that you like, but you want to then be able to edit on your images after you've applied it, you go to options and just make sure that it's set to ACDC file format. And the reason why is because that file format is editable. So if I've done that, I can then click on, say, this image right here, and then I can run that action. But when I go to run that action, what's going to happen is you're going to see that it'll create an ACDC file format for me. So the one that I just created, I ran my my gradient blue action on it, and boom, there you go. It's editable, which means that those layers are going to appear. Does that answer your question, Pia? That's a really good question. One that I didn't, I sort of had to figure out on the spot for you. So. Awesome. Great question. Okay, folks, we're a bit over time. That covers everything I wanted to cover today. Layered editing, parametric non-destructive editing, layers versus filters, and then using developments. We talked about the ACDC file format, flattened and unflattened. Talked about sidecar files. We talked about actions, and also we talked about develop presets. So lots of new stuff to play with and a little bit more under the hood understanding of what's going on and the differences between develop and edit mode. Yeah. That's all there is to it today. I'm going to just answer any other last questions that pop up in the Q&A panel, but thank you so much for participating. I really appreciate it. And I'll have some new dates posted for December workshops fairly soon. So you know what to attend in December. But yeah, it'll be on the regular times. It'll just be also pardon me, probably be mid-December. So okay, thanks everybody. Okay, Gord asked, can an ACDC file be seen by others who don't have the program? ACDC file format can be seen by others who don't have the program. Probably not, no. It's a proprietary file, so which means ACDC is a file that's editable in ACDC. I don't think in the file explorer they're going to be able to understand, like it's not going to show any information, right? Yeah, I'm going to go with no on that, Gord. I'm fairly certain that's correct. Again, you would need ACDC in order to edit an ACDC file. So what it's going to treat it as is it's not going to unpack things like thumbnails. So thumbnails are not going to be visible. Yeah. So when you're saving an ACDC file, if someone doesn't have ACDC, they're not going to see that, which means you're probably going to want to flatten that file if you're sending it to a client or something like that, because they can't do anything with ACDC files. Also, at another point, ACDC files, because they often contain multiple layers, are quite large because it's an editable file. So there's also a strong likelihood that you won't be sending your clients those files because they're too large anyway. But hopefully that answers your question, Gord. Thank you, Pia. Thank you, Sappho. Thank you, Jack. Thank you, David. Thank you, Prodaman. Thank you, Jean-Pierre. Yes, so you're not going to download this, Prodaman. You're going to watch on YouTube or go to our YouTube channel. It'll be there. Antonio, thank you so much. Larry, thank you. TJ asks, can you store a previously saved preset under the right-hand develop preset toolbar? Yeah. Yeah, they'll be in all. That's where they'll pop up. If you haven't saved them to a specific section, they'll fall under all. Okay, that's it, folks. I gotta go. I really appreciate it. If you have any questions, just reach out to me on the community section. I'll get back to you in a couple days. We'll have this on the YouTube page as soon as we can. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Yeah, I will see you in December for some workshops then. So take care, everybody.